I'm Joyce Lin, the head of developer relations at Postman. A lot of people know Postman as an API client, a way to learn about and explore your APIs. Today, I'm going to try to build a complete Jamstack application in less than 10 minutes in Postman. Let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is to create a new collection. Let's call it Jamstack. I'm going to add a star here to bring it to the top. Let's add our first request. This is going to be our API call. We'll only have one of them in this example. And we'll leave the HTTP method as get and put a placeholder for going to a URL. If I hover over the URL variable, I can see that it's, unresolved. I haven't actually defined it yet. And it'll be going to /data endpoint. Okay, so let's save that. The next thing we're going to need is to add an example. So what would we expect back from our API call? If we go to the overflow menu, we can select add example. We'll call this example data. And you can see that it's an example, well, I called it example, but you can also see from Postman, it's labeled as EG or example. And so an example in Postman is just a paired request and response. What do I expect if I make this type of request back from the server? We'll leave the request details as it is, but on the bottom we can update the response. So for my body, I'm going to have a JSON body, and I'm not going to write any code in the next 10 minutes. So where do I go when I want to not write code? I go to the Postman docs. And I'm going to look for the visualizer. This is the page in the Postman docs where I can learn about visualizing responses, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so here's an example. I'm just going to copy this to my clipboard of a JSON response body. Let's plop this in. And to be valid JSON, we can't have any comments, so I'm going to delete this little comment there and that doohickey comma. Okay, let's give our status code, let's make it something pleasant like 200 OK. And I also want a response header, content type, no surprise, application JSON. Okay, so this looks pretty good. I'm articulating this is the request I want and this is the response I expect. And I'm going to save my example. The next step is to add a mock server. So a mock server in Postman will draw from these examples. So let's add our mock to this collection. Let's call this mock data. And we're adding a mock to this collection. Any examples that we've defined in this collection will then inform what the mock responses are. Okay, I'm not going to add an environment because I don't have one yet, but I will leave this checked. So I'll save the mock server URL as an environment variable. So after I initiate this mock server, I will have an environment. And the default setting for my mock data is public. So anybody can access this mock data. But if I had some sensitive stuff in there, I can always check this and then require an API key to access this data. I'm going to leave everything else as it is. I'm going to hit create mock server. And Postman has generated this mock server URL. Okay, so I'm not going to copy that to my clipboard because I know that the way I had the settings, now I have a new environment called mock data. And if I go to the eyeball, Postman has created an environment called mock data with a single variable called URL with the mock server URL. Okay, that's what I wanted. I wanted to select that active environment. Let me close some tabs. Okay, so now we're back at our GET request. Previously, URL was undefined, but now if we hover over it, we can see that Postman is reading in from the actively selected environment and has substituted in our mock server URL. All right, let's see what we get back from /data. Yay, okay, 200 OK. Here's our array. This is copied directly from the Postman docs. It's an array of 2 people with their names and emails. Okay, so that's our data that we're pulling from a mock server. Now let's visualize that data and render it in a front end. So again, I don't want to write any code, so it's back to the docs. Okay, I'm scrolling down and I see this little snippet. Let's plop it into Postman and see what it looks like. Okay, so I'm trying to render the information that I'm getting back from my server. So I'm going to be doing that under the tests tab. Any JavaScript that I write under the tests tab will execute after I send the request, which means I have access to the response. So let's go ahead and paste that code snippet. And this is a variable called template that is a stringified HTML element. It's a table with the first row being the headers of name and email. And then this is handlebar syntax. It's going to loop through each response and then print out rows with the name and email pulled from the response. Okay, we need one more piece here. Let's enter a new line. Then back to the docs. Okay, we need our JavaScript. Let's paste it in and see what it looks like. Okay, so again, this is JavaScript, but we have access to the Postman sandbox. And so that's this little function here, pm.visualizer.set. There's two parameters. The first parameter is going to be the template, which we defined earlier. That's this stringified HTML element. And the second parameter is going to be the data that we pass through to render in that front-end template. And in this case, we are parsing the response that we get back from the server, or our mock server in this example. Okay, I think that looks good, maybe. Let's hit save and hit send. Once again, we see our JSON response, but if we tab over to visualize, we see this beautiful, beautiful, rich table. Okay, so this is not that beautiful of a table, but you can see how we're rendering information that we're getting back from our server. Now, if I want to update this information, okay, we're doing really great on time. That was well under 10 minutes. If we want to update this information, say I have more people than just Alice and Jack that I want to return, I can go here to my example, remember EG, and I can edit in real time and add new people, and then hit save. And the beauty of that is that there's no further deployment that's required for updating your backend data or for updating your static data. Postman Cloud is going to be serving this on their mock endpoint in real time. So I can edit that information. And the other thing I could do is if I don't want to be calling my mock data, I really like the idea of using a mock API, but I don't want to have people access it from within Postman. It's good for me, but I have a friend that wants to access it maybe in a mobile app that they're building. So what you can do there is go back to the call, and it's working the way I want it to, the way I expect it to. I can see this is what I expect back. If you go to the far right, there's this code icon that generates client-side code for you to replicate your API call. So in this case, this entire thing is a curl command that fires against this endpoint. That's our mock server URL going to /data route. But if I'm not building an app in curl, or I don't want my friend to have to fire curl commands, you can choose from other programming languages and frameworks. Okay, so let's take a look at our baby Jamstack app. This is a bit plain for me, but I'm not a CSS whiz. If I was, and I'm taking a look at this HTML template, you might think, hey, I wonder what else we can jam into that template. Well, the world's your oyster. You can throw in a style tag, you can bring in additional CSS, and if you have favorite libraries that you want to bring in, you can even plop in a script tag and pull in libraries from a CDN. So if you're not a super whiz, or maybe you are a whiz, there is a place where you can go look for other examples of Jamstack applications in Postman. I would search in Postman for Visualizer and take a look at what other people, you can see there's a collection here, there's an entire workspace here. Here's a team that has created all sorts of data visualization templates. If you're just getting started with Jamstack applications, you can see what other people are doing and then either use their own mock APIs or third-party or public APIs. Or if you are a whiz at this kind of stuff, you can also share stuff publicly for other people to check out.